So tune in for the Scarecrow Spookshow!
Welcome, creepy kids and little monsters. It's your ghostly host Aidan, and today we are returning to the pages of the Scarecrow Spookshow for a special called Horrorful Holidays. The Scarecrow Spookshow is a collection of family-friendly spooky stories. It is available exclusively in my online bookstore. You can also join in on Scapula Comics on Patreon, where you'll be sent a special digital PDF with all of the chapters we'll be going over tonight. I always appreciate the support you creepy kids give me, so let's have some fun tonight with Horrorful Holidays. So, for those of you who watched the last creator commentary, you'll know that the Scarecrow Spookshow was originally intended for newspaper comics. Now, newspaper comics run year-round, so big surprise, a lot of them will often do material based on the holidays. Not surprisingly, a lot of comic strips that were turned into animation would often do holiday specials. Three of the most common holidays that a lot of the funnies address are, of course, three of the best ones: Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. I knew I had to do some holiday-themed material, and big surprise, it turned out to be some of my favorite work in the book. Here's hoping you guys will enjoy tonight. Let's get the holidays started early.
It's a nice and scary time, isn't it? All those wonderful costumes and masks and makeup. I also worry a little bit
about the things that can spoil the fun of Halloween.
Alrighty kids, let's begin. So, you know the drill. If you've got an actual paper copy of the Scarecrow Spookshow, follow along. If you are a paying patron, you've been sent a PDF with all of the chapters we're going to be covering tonight. Let's begin, appropriately enough, with one of the best holidays of them all, Halloween. We begin with visiting our old friends, the DeMonte family, as they set up for the greatest holiday of the fall. We already have not a huge problem, although making a huge deal of it would have been a good idea, and that is, this setup is nice, they're obviously into it, but I could have pushed this a lot further. This isn't bad, you know, nice big cobwebs and tombstones and flying creatures around the door, but I'm sure everyone out there has seen at least one household around where they really go gung-ho for the holidays. There's some nice neighborhoods not too far away from where I live where their Halloween displays are, it's almost like a miniature theme park right in their front yard. And of course, that's not just for Halloween. There's some other holidays where people really go nuts with decorations. Compared to a lot of the really hardcore holiday setups I've seen, this one actually almost feels a little restrained. I probably could have pushed it even further. I'd imagine, you know, someone like the Baron really would throw everything he's got into an awesome Halloween display for his house. Now, of course, you know, I could have overloaded it and just like whoosh, piled all sorts of stuff in there, but it's okay for what it is. It's one of those times where I kind of wish I had done like just one more pass at it and like really filled it up. But anyway, there's some nice stuff going on there too. Let's see our family in their costumes. First of all, we have our old buddy Dwight. Dwight is dressed as a dinosaur. Those of you guys who watched the last Scarecrow Spookshow commentary video, you know how many times I mentioned Calvin and Hobbes. You could almost make a drinking game out of it. In this case, this is almost kind of sort of another Calvin and Hobbes reference where there was a Halloween strip where Calvin was dressed as a dinosaur, and it is kind of similar to this. This just has the headpiece on Dwight. Giselle dressed as Edgar Allan Poe. First of all, bit of gender bending is always fun. Those of you guys who have read the book know that she knows Poe's tales inside and out. What is Baron gonna dress as? Well, he's back in his old duds from the Scarecrow Spookshow TV show, his work uniform. Something I'm gonna point out really quickly here is this chapter was drawn much later. Those of you guys who have read the book, you know that there's 13 chapters. They were not drawn in sequence. Some came later because some ideas came along the line further down. I think the book was going to be 10 chapters first, then it grew to 12, then it grew to 13, just for, you know, good lucky number. This chapter was drawn very late into the game, and one of the things that I noticed when I was doing this here is that putting Baron in his old duds didn't quite seem enough. It didn't quite push it far enough into Halloween territory. That's a nice outfit, but like I was saying with that Halloween display up above, you can always push things a step further. And in this case, it felt like he needed just a little bit more, so I added the clown white to his face. And it worked well enough that I decided to go back to all the earlier chapters where he did appear as the Baron, and I added that white color tone. It's not super important, but I just thought I'd throw it out there because you're watching these commentaries just for that little bit of extra knowledge. I hope you guys are hardcore fans. I wouldn't be doing this otherwise, but yes, I would. What do I got to do with my life other than decorate for Halloween and draw silly comics? What did those comments about calling the cops mean? Well, Baron gets a little too into scaring people. Bazille's trying to warn him off of it. Baron knows good old fun and games involves scaring people around Halloween. So we have our first trick-or-treaters coming down the way. He's going to assume everybody loves Halloween as much as he does, and he's going to assume that they're fine with being spooked. Hides behind and jumps out with a big booga booga! Getting scared for fun. We could talk a little bit about that. So I've vended at a lot of horror conventions in my time, and I worked at theme parks as a caricature artist around Halloween time too, back in the day. And I will say there's basically two types of people when it comes to haunts and scare acting and stuff like that. There are the people who are really into it, who, have fun, they have a great time getting scared, and they know it's all part of the show, part of the game. And then there are the people who don't. There are definitely people out there who take it as a bruise to their ego when they get scared, and they react very badly. Now, more often than not, it's guys, because there's a big social stigma about men being fearless and all that stuff too, and if you get scared, you're a little wimp, and all that crap. A lot of times they will try to recover their pride by losing their temper or picking a fight, and that's always really unfortunate to see. Nobody actually has any hostile intentions with scare actors and whatnot. They're there, they're just doing their jobs and they're having fun, and it's always unfortunate to see people who react to that with hostility or even outright danger. Anyway, this kid here obviously is not into it. Poor Baron takes a fist in the stomach. Ooh, poor old Baron. Eek. Nice job punching an old man, you stupid jerk. Baron is going to try to make the most of it. He's going to try to roll with the punches, so to speak. Let's hope the next one isn't going to be as bad. Here comes another little one. The last two trick-or-treaters I don't think were based on anybody in particular. These two coming along. The mom there is my sister-in-law, and the child is my niece-in-law. The only difference, though, is that in this case, the child is silent, unlike my niece-in-law. Walking along with her little pail. Baron, of course, is He's gonna go about this differently because she's a kid. Like I was saying about vending in conventions and stuff like that, you always treat children, especially little children, very differently than anyone else. It's always very gingerly treating them, very nice, very friendly, not just because their parents are there and maybe you want their parents to buy their kids stuff, or you just don't want to upset anybody around there. But a lot of times, yeah, when I have kids come up to my convention tables, you have to be extra sweet, extra patient, you talk a little differently, a little slower to make sure that they absorb what you're saying, and you want to make sure that it's a friendly, nice, safe environment. That's all well and good unless if the kid is a little jerk. That is one of the many pet peeves. Not only what I was just saying about dealing with temperamental attendees and stuff like that, people who don't like getting scared. Dealing with temperamental children is even worse because there's very little you can do about that more often than not. It has to be left in the hands of their parents or guardians, because pissing off their parents or guardians by trying to parent the kid yourself never ends well. Sweet little tyke here may not have much to say, but she does have a lot to shout with her fists. Oh no, Baron's nose is busted. If you have a nose as big as I do, you worry constantly about whether or not anyone's ever gonna break it, because you don't want to end up like friggin' Adrian Brody with that gigantic nose that kind of veers off in one direction. I can make fun of celebrities. They make more money than I do selling comics. Hey kids, buy the Scarecrow Spookshow. But once again, Baron is going to try to keep his spirits up. He's going to be very optimistic, unlike another comic book character that I've drawn before, but we'll get to him later. More children are coming. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Very obviously a reference to our old buddy Alice Cooper. Very evil expression on Baron, which was very rare to do in the book. It was always trying to present the Baron as like, a nice guy, all fun and all that stuff too. But here, with just this once, we have a little bit of maliciousness. Ooh, they're gonna get scared big time. And who's coming along? It's our old buddy Scapula. Or is it? Now, those of you guys who watched the last Scarecrow Spookshow commentary video know that I went off on a gigantic tangent about Scapula and how he is not part of the same universe. And I hate using that term for a nice little self-contained book, but yes, this exists in its own universe outside of Scapula continuity, and that any appearances by Scapula in this book were done with regards to the fact that in this universe, Scapula is a fictional character. Kids coming up here just dressed as Scapula like they saw him on Saturday morning cartoons. Believe me, if I could get Scapula on TV, I would. I forget at the moment where the Scapula series was while I was doing Scarecrow Spookshow. This book was done off and on for a number of years in between my paying gigs and freelance and all that stuff and the Scapula series. The designs of the kids' costumes seem to be based on the webcomic era of the Scapula series, but it's kind of hard for me to say. This might have been the transition period to the Sinister Monster book where the characters were all completely redesigned. Okay, so that was a huge tangent. Let's stay on topic as we see Baron jump out here, and let's jump off topic again, twice. Baron, of course, is dressed as, you know who, the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, Creature from the Black Lagoon was a humongous steal for me. This was the first horror movie I ever remember seeing in my life, and it's what turned me on to horror. It's what turned me on to this culture, this lifestyle. So, of course, it is a landmark. You can hear me ramble more about Creature from the Black Lagoon in the very first episode of the Dada Hyenas Creature Show drawing series. Just jump all the way back and just hear me gush over how much the Gill Man has meant to my life. That music sting you're seeing at the bottom is, of course, the creature's leitmotif. You know how it goes. If you've seen that movie, you know those three chords by heart because they play all throughout the film. But it works. It sticks in your brain. Yeah, I had to pay homage to the creature here. The other big homage going on is to another very important horror landmark in my life, and that was my longtime association with the horror rock band The Rhythm Coffin. You guys who follow me along for a long time know I've mentioned Rhythm Coffin many times. If you, again, going back to my drawing videos, you know the main theme song that plays at the beginning of most every video is a song they did called A Famous Monster I Want to Be. Back in the day when I performed with the Rhythm Coffin, I was their main artist and created a lot of props and directed some music videos for them, and it was a wonderful relationship. Those years were great. But one of the many characters I would play in their live stage shows was a character called the Famous Monster, who was, of course, just me with a Creature from the Black Lagoon mask and gloves, sometimes with the top hat, sometimes not. When they played the Famous Monster I Want to Be song, I would just come out on stage and ham it up and dance and mock scare the audience with this creature get up, and it's a very, very happy memory for me. Not that the kids here appreciate it either. At least the kids aren't going to punch him this time. Maybe that's sort of irony that kids dressed as supervillains are actually much more well-behaved than the ones dressed as little fairies and kitties and stuff like that. Of course, Baron's not going to get punched. He's going to get constricted by a big old tentacle that comes off screen, hoisted up in the air by this thing. Now, what the hell is this thing? Where did it come from? What do we know about it? Not much. Again, those of you guys who have read the book know that there are definitely occasions in the book where the supernatural and the bizarre just comes out of nowhere. Maybe it's a naughty little ghost haunting the house. Maybe it's a great big crab that gets killed and ends up on the dinner table. This is one of the several occasions where something strange shows up and we don't need to know why. It's just there. There's just a monster. It's a very bizarre kind of monster that very obviously is not one of Baron's horror movie props. What is this thing? What is it based on? It is based on a much different source than a lot of the Universal monsters and the kind of stuff that Baron would be showing and stuff there. In this case, this is a callback to H.P. Lovecraft. I must have talked about Lovecraft at some point in one of these videos. I think probably when I was talking about Zarbanok Pupu in the Scapula and the Sinister Monster Doom Legion video. Now, of course, there I was talking about him in regards to Cthulhu, because everybody knows Cthulhu. But the reason for that is Cthulhu is actually one of the few Lovecraft monsters that really is described in detail. In this particular case, this is from a different story called At the Mountains of Madness. Lovecraft stories didn't always give full descriptions to what the things you were looking at are. This is the reason why people tend to make fun of his very common used adjectives like eldritch and cyclopean and gibbous and stuff like that. This creature here is based on some pulp illustrations from probably, I want to say, the original printing of At the Mountains of Madness in pulp form. I'm sorry to say I don't remember the name of the artist who did this, and I feel bad when I don't give proper artist credit, but hopefully I'll just, if I manage to find it at some point, I'll write it here. The body is kind of a fruit shape, there are bat wings, and the eyes are on stalks. There's also something vaguely Jim Henson-ish about this design, too. Jim Henson was a huge influence on me, even though I don't believe I've mentioned him very often. This almost looks like something that could have shown up backstage at the Muppet Show. I don't know if it would have picked up a character and spun him around and threw him really violently, but It happened back then. Poor old Baron goes flying, and the kids go running off. It's not the first time we've ever seen Scapula running away in terror, but... Poor old Baron, who has just been thrown through the air. This is a guy in his 70s. Oh my god, in reality, yeah, they'd be calling an ambulance for him. But in cartoon logic, he's just got some of those nice little cartoon stars. Wow, great job scaring him. And of course, big punchline, he has no idea where the hell that thing came from. Because like we had mentioned before, sometimes weird stuff just happens with no explanation. And when it does, the smartest thing to do is just run back inside the house. The creature goes slithering off as we wish everybody a happy Halloween. On to the next big holiday.
Fun of Halloween.
What's that turkey doing in my sink?
Dressing up nice. Ugh, I can't stand it. Well, Halloween was all fun and games, but now we come to our next holiday, Thanksgiving. Good food and all that fun stuff too, but we also know it's also a matter of family reunions. The DeMonte family about to celebrate Thanksgiving, and big surprise, the kids aren't happy to get dressed up either because you're wearing these dorky, awful clothes and you have to slick back your hair and you have to wipe up all your makeup and put away all your drugs and stuff like that, and it's just not fun. Well, why do we do it? Supposedly you dress up nice to impress your family members, but we all know family reunions are largely a matter of scrutinizing and nitpicking and criticizing the young ones. It's almost like an employee review. It's not fun, and it's mostly done for the benefit of the older family members who just want something to crab about. I didn't have a lot of fun growing up. But you know what? In the world of fiction, that doesn't always have to be the case. So rather than do a story all about the annoying family reunions I used to have to do, I decided to spice things up and instead have a visit from Mystical Miranda's Circus of Oddities. Those of you who have read the book will know that in the final chapter we reveal a little more of the DeMonte family and all of the kids that Baron has had. From his first marriage, he has a son named Caleb. From his second marriage, he has two kids named Ariel and Miranda, the last one we're seeing in this chapter. Caleb, Ariel, Miranda are all references to Shakespeare's The Tempest, which I guess would make Baron Prospero, except he was a great big whiner.
No, everybody back in Milan was so mean to me.
Sack up, Prospero. Okay, stepping through the door, we have one of Baron's kids, the only one to come and visit, Mystical Miranda. In the first Scarecrow Spookshow commentary video, I had mentioned that sometimes I write these characters with sort of a voice in mind. Baron would have sounded a lot like John Casserly with the low baritone voice. Mystical Miranda was another character who I had written in mind, and I wrote her dialogue with the impression of a very bad Liza Minnelli impersonator. So she'd be stepping in going, "Daddy, the prodigal daughter has returned!" That's even worse than what I had in mind, but maybe there's some Liza Minnelli impersonator or drag act out there that could probably do a better job than that. We can see more of the resemblance between her and Baron, not just with the physical features, but also the very flamboyant showmanship angle. She gives one of those remarks to the kids that you always used to hear growing up about how quickly you're growing up. Who are these babies and why do they keep getting so big? You know, when you were a kid, you couldn't stand hearing comments like that from adults, but when you're an adult and you have a child family member, it's like you go see them, you blink your eyes, and like a moment later, they're already going through puberty, so that's all of the blood relatives of the DeMontes that we're going to be seeing in this chapter, but it turns out we have a bit of an extended family because Mystical Miranda has brought her entire troupe. First of all, there's the amazing bearded man. Next we have Henrietta the Skinny. I don't know if that would be offensive anymore or whatnot. Yeah, whatever, she seems happy enough. Next up we have the man with no shirt. Ha ha ha, well, he can't wear a shirt. A little side note, this guy's bit of his appearance and his attitude, mostly the attitude, not the appearance, was based on a neighbor I had growing up who was always extremely uptight and very critical of kids around. I kind of parodied him here. I think he was also a lawyer, so maybe I should stop talking about him right now. And finally, we have Bob. Bob is a tapir man. I don't know why, I don't know how. How did a tapir get in there? Some kind of weird animal bingo game I have going on when I make these comics, and I just had to get a tapir in there in one way or another. It's just a little catch-up time between Miranda and Daddy as she tells him some random story about performing. It's not so much the story that's important as it is just kind of getting to know this character, just how excited she is, how flamboyant and showmanship, even when she's telling a story. Poof! Doves go flying everywhere! They go right into the concession stand and make a mess all over the popcorn. That is a poo joke. We got a poo joke in a family reunion comic. Now it's time to get a little serious. Perhaps a little too serious. This next part here is very much a jump in tone, not only from this chapter, but also from the entire book, where we have a bit of catching up and a bit of talking about what's going on with the family. As I had mentioned before, Baron has 3 kids, and only one of them has shown up. We hear that Ariel's in China, and Caleb, well, he just didn't feel like showing up. Something that Baron seems not happy about, but also doesn't want to make a fuss, whereas Miranda says that's ridiculous, he should be there seeing his own kids. Once again, if you have the book and you go to the last chapter, it reveals where everybody came from, but also the family dynamic is explained a lot more thoroughly. It's not always a happy affair. Why do we have family drama at all? First of all, it's a family reunion, and those always involve family drama. It does seem like such a big jump in tone from a book that was, monsters and ghosts and silly things happening and zombies and rock bands and stuff like that. And all of a sudden now we are talking about family drama and parental neglect and, why is this included at all? It's mostly included just as a way to humanize the characters. A lot of comic strips and comic books that didn't necessarily seem like they needed the soap opera angle, if you want to call it that, did start including them to very good effect, and that did include the funny pages too. There are a number of long-running comic strips that did address issues like this, and the tone and the intensity of it all depended. There were some very serious ones, and there were some ones that just kind of lightly touched on it, whatever the creator felt more comfortable with doing. And this did expand a lot more in the webcomic era. Once the internet opened up and took away everybody's privacy, people started revealing, a lot more of their personal stories, and a lot of webcomics did become largely about personal affairs. I'd imagine a lot of it was autobiographical, and some of it might have just been it's an interesting story, and in this case, it is a little bit of both. Life is not always a happy affair, but it can be dealt with appropriately. That involves drawing a bunch of comics. Back to the man with no shirt. Oh boy, he's having a hard time, man. Showbiz is hell! You've been to reunions and parties where you're just stuck talking to some guy who's just like blathering on and on and on, and they're usually talking about their comics and posting them on YouTube. In the background, we have Henrietta, the bearded man, and Dwight, who looks a little nervous. The reason why Dwight looks a little nervous there is because originally there was a big fart sound effect coming from the bearded man, and I decided, that's a little too much. We just had a pigeon poo-poo joke. Let's keep the scatological humor in the bathroom where it belongs. Just a little moment here where Dwight's talking about stage fright. We know from other chapters that Dwight is a very nervous child, but he would be interested in wondering how people work up the nerve to go and perform. And like I was saying in the previous chapter about performing with the rhythm coffin, it is kind of interesting that the first couple of times, stage fright is a matter, but you do get over it very quickly. And I think that's a big part of the joy of showmanship and knowing that you're putting on a good show for people. Henrietta and Bearded Man claim that they're not scared of nothing until we hear a big old sound effect. Somebody forgot to feed Hulko again. Kriega! Edgar Rice Burroughs fans will know that is a battle cry for the apes. I forget a lot of the ape language. Kriega, Bondolo, Tarzan, Wana, Makpikan. Some literary folks out there can correct me if that's wrong. The wrath of Hulko's about to begin. Who is Hulko? Hulko's an orangutan with a tutu. Let's see. Weird animal bingo. Did I get it? I just missed it. That's the least of their problems, because now Hulko is mad and she's charging right through with big nasty teeth. That ape once bit off a man's nose for teasing her with a pen light. Oh, could I have gotten away with that if this had made it to the newspaper pages? What could make it worse? How about another savage beast? In comes crashing King Mongula. We didn't see Mongula in the last chapter. We're not going to see him in the next chapter. So if you're wondering where this monster came from, who he is, again, read the book or jump to the last commentary video to see Mongula's amazing origin story. For here and now, Mongula is just going to show up and deal with Hulko himself. The sounds of savagery are going on. Oh geez, I can't watch! Blah, I really can't watch. As Mongula and Hulko find love. The only place you'll find cartoons more disturbing than this is DeviantArt. If you thought the little anecdote about Hulko biting off somebody's nose was gross, well, turns out Bearded Man has another story about Hulko getting amorous with a trained pony. which is probably got to be one of the most disgusting things I've ever mentioned in any of these comics, let alone a family-friendly comic. Hey folks, buy the Scarecrow Spookshow for your little ones. But whatever, we're all gonna sit around the table anyway. Baron says a line that I think I should have double-checked or had corrected, where he says, this old ghoul does fancy himself as a gourmand. I do not know the difference between a gourmand and a gourmet, so if you do, go right ahead, correct me in the comments below. You can be as know-it-all as you want to, because honestly, I should have researched that myself, and I in the end, I got a little confused about what the difference is. Either way, I assume it's somebody who is familiar with the culinary arts and can appreciate a good meal. That'll have to do. And now the family's going to say grace. I'm not going to go into a humongous rant about religion because nobody wants to hear it and it's going to piss off a lot of people. You never know. I am going to say that presenting Christianity in any context these days is usually verboten. Pretty much the only time you see Christians anymore, they always had to be depicted as fanatical lunatics. Showing casual Christianity is something that's not seen anymore. I am just going to say that even presenting just a family saying grace around the dinner table is something you really can't do much in. Why is it even in here at all? Again, it's just a humanizing moment because I grew up when families did get together, you usually would say grace, whether or not people actually meant it. Grace before dinner was just an old custom and it just felt kind of appropriate here. Plus, it's also a contrast from what we're going to see in a moment. So let's forget all that and go to a big old mad-style chaos panel. Everybody's digging right in. For those of you who have watched any of the Scapula commentary videos, you know that the EC mad-style chaos panels are a big staple of my work, and every now and then you just gotta have this big old splash page where everybody is going nuts, and you get a lot of chicken fat visual gags thrown in. It's just like old times again. Oh, I love this family! That's Thanksgiving for you folks. Jump in for the next big holiday.
And Earth kids join Santa to battle the bad guys of Mars.
S-A-N-T-A-C-L-A-U-S, hooray for Santa Claus!
We come now to that most wonderful time of the year, Christmas. Rather, it kept being Halloween, but we're gonna do what we do with what we've got. And here we go with our Christmas story with a big, colorful, festive scene with all the holiday cheer and all that stuff too. And yeah, you guys know how it goes. This actually does work a little better than I was lamenting earlier that the Halloween opening scene wasn't Halloween-y enough. This one is just hitting you with the Christmas and all that stuff too. It's a little easier this time, I guess, because we have the characters more in frame and because all the holiday stuff is miniatures and all that stuff too. So it's easier to give the impression that you're filling up the panel. Whatever. You know who's really into the Christmas cheer is Dwight. He goes running in the store. Because kids have all the energy in the world, and especially when it comes to Christmas time, then they're on hyperdrive. Someone who isn't full of Christmas cheer, however, is the other DeMonte child, which is, of course, Giselle. We have her back to the camera here, keeping it very aloof as she snidely remarks about Dwight's energy, and Baron sort of casts a reminder that, didn't you love the holidays too? And she gives the most teenage response you can. Meh. 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 Bah humbug! Christmas is in the air, and what's not to love about the most wonderful time of the year? Well, Santa Claus. But he's actually a fake. Baron's senses are tingling as he looks on over the railing and sees down there, while, yes, it is indeed the mall Santa. But don't you realize that this Santa is a Does that bother you? Well, actually, this panel does bother me. I've talked before in other videos that it is kind of hard for an artist to confront some of their weaknesses, and one of my biggest weaknesses regards backgrounds and drawings and perspective and all that fun stuff too. A lot of this background here is very much phoned in. You get just enough of the idea of where it is. It's a mall. You get an idea of where our characters are in relation to each other, but at the same time, I very much skimped on this background. The other thing that kind of bothers me is the fact that I don't think we got enough reactions going on. I mean, the two most important focal points are there, Baron and the mall Santa's reaction. I think I could have done a lot more people. There should have been like an entire foreground of just these stunned reactions, because I think that would have driven it home. And in this case, I think using just a handful of people in silhouettes in the background was kind of some corner cutting that I'm not happy with. Now, thankfully, in the future Scapula books like Sinister Monster Doom Legion, I did make an effort to make sure that crowd scenes were always interesting to look at. It still adds something to the scene. And speaking of scenes, Baron is making a big one as he screams, "Imposter! Charlatan!" And Giselle can only kind of react in horror. What's going to make that horror much worse is when a group of her peers show up, and oh boy. Who's in this crowd? Well, first of all, there's Crystal. Those of you guys who have read the book know Crystal is Giselle's only friend from school. The only other kid of note here is the kind of emo-looking guy is a character named Jamie. Again, if you have the book, you know that this is the guy that Giselle has a huge crush on. They're, of course, coming at the most inopportune time as Baron is screaming up a storm, and poor Giselle, as who we're going to see has some insecurities to deal with. First and foremost, has to deal with the fact that she's being treated like a little kid. Say, no matter how tempted you may be, do not sit upon that man's lap. As Giselle kind of frumps down into this sunken, sad shape. Crystal kind of humors him, saying, "Give him hell, Baron," as Baron races off to save the day from a mall Santa. And that's, it's gotta be as embarrassing as it gets. Oh boy, poor girl. Giselle goes and sits by herself as Dwight comes rushing in. He's just come from the toy store, which is like the coolest place in the world when you're a kid, and he tells her that the new Dino Master Lords are in place. That's not a real franchise, but that does sound like very much something that I would have been into at that age. He mentions the Behemoth Brontosaur, which is, of course, a Scapula Easter egg. You guys who Scapula fans out there, you remember the Behemoth. Giselle, however, is not in the best of moods, as she's going to be a little critical towards Dwight. Why are you still into toys? Aren't you too old for that? Now, this page deals with two major difficulties about growing up that I definitely did go through. One of them is the pressure to grow up as fast as possible. There is a big stigma on kids, or at least there was when I was growing up, that kids didn't want to be kids. Kids wanted to be teenagers as soon as they could. Teenagers didn't want to be teenagers. Teenagers wanted to be adults as soon as they could. And then, of course, as soon as you are an adult, you lament and wish that you were a kid again. Giselle is very much feeling the pressure to grow up as fast as possible, and even though Dwight isn't quite at that level yet, you know, Dwight still likes what he likes, and being interested in stuff that was deemed childish, of course, would ostracize you. Now, of course, I'm an adult and I work for a collectible company, and all of our consumer fan base is entirely just adults who love that kid stuff again, so it all comes full circle, but that doesn't mean it's an easy trip all the way around, especially towards the beginning, especially when you're feeling this pressure on you. One of the other pressures that Giselle's going to mention here is how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself, and of course, when you're a teenager, that viewpoint is very much out of skew. Giselle is lamenting the fact that she thinks that she's fat and ugly and weird, and she seems to think everybody else is the case. I'm sure a lot of you out there who probably had a hard time in your teens and trying to deal with the fact that your body is making sure you look as awful as possible, but also just every little insecurity, every little flaw, it just feels like it's magnified and judged by everybody around you, and that kind of pressure was really hard to deal with at that age. A lot of what's going on here on this page with both Giselle and Dwight were things that I went through at different times in my life, and putting it down here on paper, I guess, is a bit cathartic, but it also is just humanizing these characters and just showing that, you know, what they're going through is not always easy. You know who else is not having a good time? Is Santa, as Baron comes in and says, "You're not fooling anybody!" Sort of like that establishing shot scene with the mall earlier, I do kind of wish I had more of a crowd here, pulled the camera back, so to speak, and maybe had more of the line of kids screaming in horror, because that really is the comedy of this scene here. I think it's just the kids' reaction. Baron is pulled off, and we get some very fun dialogue here. Now, it's kind of interesting, because I consider myself an artist first and foremost, and a writer only second. But I will say that writing the dialogue here I think was a lot more fun than even doing the drawing, because just getting to write down like this really florid prose for Baron is always a ton of fun. "Can you not see through this vile mountebank's web of deception? Cease this hiding behind your putrid smokescreen and reveal who you really are!" Oh, it was fun. Next panel here, once again, I wish I had fleshed out that crowd in the back a little more, but whatever. Giselle knows that, you know, security's escorting them out. Kind of like the Halloween story, it seems like the Demantes have to deal with the law quite a bit. Now we turn the page, and of course the very first thing you're going to see when you turn the page is this big drawing of Baron fighting Santa, which unfortunately means you've skipped right to the end of the page because it's a big drawing and it's much more saturated. The previous panels, even though they're of more importance and you're supposed to read them in order, they're also desaturated and darker, so unfortunately your eye goes right to the punchline immediately, I'm sorry to say. But let's reel it back and try to read this page in the proper order it's supposed to be. Dwight, of course, like a lot of nice kids, takes the blame immediately, and he seems to think that the reason why Giselle is mad is because of him. That's not the case though, as Giselle has had a moment to kind of cool down, cool like winter. A bit of our opening up moment as Giselle is going to reveal more about what is bothering her. Giselle actually talks a bit about how she feels about her grandpa. We had seen all throughout the book that Giselle takes a lot of Baron's antics with a bit of a cynical attitude. Sometimes it seems condescending, sometimes it seems very contemptuous, but in this case here we're showing that that's actually very far from the truth. Giselle is actually kind of impressed with the fact that Baron is not ashamed of himself. No matter how much of a cuckoo he's being, he still doesn't seem to tear himself down as much as she does. Just a little bit more expository dialogue, just showing that, you know, just how rough it is being at school at that age, feeling like there's always a ton of pressure and judgment on you, and the fear of not only fitting in but also not accepting yourself. Dwight can reciprocate. Dwight also mentions that, you know, with both the guys and girls in his class, they all judge him too. When you're a kid and you still have kid interests like dinosaurs and stuff like that, you are seen as sort of beneath all the other kids. It's kind of interesting that Giselle can kind of feel a little better knowing that other people kind of have the same kind of problems that they do. She wants Dwight to be happy, even though the two of them can fight sometimes and tease each other sometimes throughout the book, that she still is looking out for him. And I don't think she wants the kiddo to go through what she goes through. This wonderful, nice, sentimental moment that's completely ruined by "Got you, you insidious impersonator!" as Baron grabs the Santa Claus and wrestles him around. And oh boy, we've got a problem in our hands. This is bad, but it's only going to get worse because this isn't just any Santa Claus. This is the true identity of Santa. And it is the stupidest looking alien I could possibly design. That was a challenge here, was to design an alien that looked so friggin' dumb. Why? Because as we're gonna find out, he's not much of an alien invader. Baron has encountered this character long ago, disguised as the Easter Bunny, and now we're gonna find out a bit more about this Neptunian. Get ready for the longest, most random tangent I have ever gone on. And you guys who have watched these commentary videos will know that I often go pretty far out. This time we're going as far out as Neptune as we talk about a very, very obscure source. I grew up reading a lot of Marvel, and that goes beyond the superhero stuff too, because before that, around the 50s and early 60s, before their big superhero boom, Marvel did a lot of sci-fi stuff. They did like monster comics and alien comics and stuff like that. One of the proto-superheroes they had around that period was a character named Dr. Droom. If you don't remember Dr. Droom, there's a very good reason why, and it's because Dr. Droom sucked. Dr. Droom's stories were always the most boring, dumb, anticlimactic short stories you could read, and it's not surprising in the least that when the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man showed up on the scene, they completely blew him away into obscurity. Dr. Droom's importance, I guess, is that he was sort of a test run for Doctor Strange, who would come along later. There is some similarity between the characters' origins. The difference, though, is that even though Doctor Strange had amazing Steve Ditko artwork and a very interesting character, Dr. Droom had a guy who turned into a very offensive Asian stereotype who has the magical power to grow facial hair. But aside from that idiocy, Dr. Droom's stories were always very anticlimactic, which is a bad guy would show up, Dr. Droom would find out that there's a bad guy there, he would do something like hypnotizing him and say, "You're not bad anymore," and the bad guy would say, "Curse is foiled again," and that's the end of it. Aliens did show up quite a lot in Marvel Comics around this time period, and yes, Dr. Droom himself encountered some aliens, including one particular story where Dr. Droom uncovers this alien's plot. Now, you think this would lead to like a big showdown or a fight or whatnot, but as soon as he says, "You're an alien," the alien reveals himself as an alien, and the alien gives this ultimatum saying that, "You may have foiled me this time, but I'll be back, so beware, beware," and he slowly teleports away. I'm not a huge Marvel historian, but I will bet most anything this alien never returned, and that this empty threat which was meant to sound dramatic, is still just yet another case of just a stupid comic. So of course, in my own stupid comic, we had to have a very similar scene where this alien, this very stupid looking alien named Quigsnar, issues this ultimatum to Baron saying,
You have not seen the wrath of Quigsnar, people, beware,
and he teleports away. I don't think the planet is in any danger from an alien invasion because, as Baron mentions there, Neptunians are a notoriously stupid lot. Now, did we need aliens in a Christmas story? Well, no, but you could say, why did we need monsters or any sort of type here? I had sort of debated whether or not having an alien was a good idea because, like I had said in the previous video about wanting the Scarecrow Spookshow's universe to be as self-contained as possible, as soon as you introduce something like aliens, it does kind of open up a whole lot of questions like, well, what is beyond? Where do these aliens come from? Other aliens and stuff like that. I took the gamble anyway because I sort of figured, like the ghosts and giant crabs and Lovecraft monsters that we had seen previously that just showed up, we really don't need an explanation for this stupid alien other than Baron has encountered him once before and he's encountering him again now. Maybe he'll encounter him again someday in another stupid plot where the alien is disguised as a groundhog on Groundhog Day. And I thought it was a funny idea at the time, so forgive me. And if you're as confused as Giselle is, well, maybe Baron will tell us the whole story someday. Probably not. Let's get back to Christmas time. As Baron says, let us head home for eggnog and gingerbread cookies, 'tis the season. And we get our little closer here. I think this is my favorite Giselle and Dwight moment in the entire series. Dwight gives something of a backhanded compliment, but it's still sweet in its own way. Just saying, you know, he said everyone thought you were fat and ugly and weird. Yeah, well, I don't think you're fat or ugly at all. Why, you little guy! Well, if it had been one of my siblings, it probably would have punched me in the head. But in the fictional world, families can get along after all, and maybe that's something of a Christmas miracle of itself. So to that I say to all of you, happiest of happy holidays, and I hope you've enjoyed this. And that's our show. Thank you so very much for watching, everybody. Once again, the Scarecrow Spookshow is available in my online bookstore. Your support always means a lot. Happy holidays to every single one of you. See you in the funny pages. Bye-bye.